Is Supervisor Frazier here? All right, Gary Skinner,
I'm here. Thank you.
Tim McLaughlin, David Ross, Jennifer Mitchell, Jennifer DeBrule, Todd Horsley,
Here.
and Steve Pittard. Lee Carter,
Here.
Elizabeth Guzman, is Delegate Guzman with us? Okay, and Senator Barker.
Here.
We do have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I know it looks like a couple of people joined, or maybe one. I think Supervisor Allen is now here.
That's correct.
Here.
Thank you, Supervisor Allen. We do have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Is there anyone
All right.
else who, I'm sorry, is there anyone else who joined who was not called in during the roll call? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, we will now move to item 4, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
So move Supervisor Bailey, Prince William County.
Second. Supervisor Angry.
Second it. Are there any questions starting with the DRPT?
No questions.
Okay. Members of the General Assembly?
No questions.
Okay. Prince William County?
No questions.
Stafford County?
No questions from Meg Bomke.
No questions from Supervisor Allen.
Okay. Manassas City?
No questions.
Manassas Park? Fredericksburg?
No questions.
And Spotsylvania?
No questions.
Okay. Christine, can you call the roll?
Yes, I've been informed that Supervisor Frazier is now here. And because we are missing Supervisor Bodie and Supervisor Vega, if Benny Smith is here, we will have him be a voting member for Prince William County. Is Benny Smith present? Okay, I guess he's not here.
Well,
All right,
it looks like he's
um,
present, but on mute.
Yeah, I see him on the line.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
okay.
present.
I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, going back to the motion, calling the roll. Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Benny Smith,
Aye.
Pam Sebeski,
Aye.
Donald Shoemaker, I didn't hear a vote from Donald Shoemaker.
He's muted.
Oops. Aye.
Thank you. Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Meg Bomke,
Aye.
Matthew Kelly,
Aye.
Gary Skinner.
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
thank you. Todd Horsley,
Aye.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, we'll now move into item 5, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, Pam Sebeski, Manassas City.
Moved by Senator Barker, seconded by Vice Chair Sebeski. Are there any questions, starting with the DRPT?
No questions.
Any members of the General Assembly?
No.
No.
Prince William County,
No.
Stafford County,
No questions, but I would like to abstain because I wasn't present.
No.
Manassas City,
I'm all good.
Manassas Park, Fredericksburg,
No questions.
Spotsylvania County.
No questions.
No questions.
All right, Christine, will you please call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Benny Smith.
Aye.
I'm sorry, was that an abstain?
No, aye.
Aye, sorry. Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Donald Shoemaker,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Meg Bumpkey,
Abstain, please.
Matthew Kelly.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I missed Gary Snellings on that.
Not present.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confusing Gary Skinner and Gary Snellings. I
No worries.
apologize. Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Aye.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
and George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
It will now go into item 6, the Virginia Railway Express Acting Chief Executive Officer's time. Mr. Rich Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Commissioners and others. VRE continues to operate at a reduced service level. For the month of June, ridership increased from approximately 620 daily riders at the beginning of the month to approximately 1,000 daily riders at the end of the month. As ridership continues to increase, we will lengthen existing trains and add trains up to our normal service level to add more seats in order to continue to manage social distancing. On-time performance for the month of June was the same as the month of May, which was 93% system-wide. Throughout the month of June, we continue to incorporate different measures to welcome the return of our riders, installation of signage for social distancing, enhanced cleaning processes, and the installation of hand sanitizer dispensers on board trains and at stations occurred. Passengers are required to wear face coverings, and we're currently seeing a nearly 100% daily compliance. Our train conductors do have face coverings available on board every VRE train in the event our riders need one. We are pushing daily messaging through social media, direct communications with our riders, and other means to highlight the measures we have taken and provide our riders with the information to bring them back to VRE. VRE staff continues to work remotely. All business functions are fully operational as we continue to maintain a continuity of operations. In the coming weeks, I will report on preliminary FY 2020 year-end financial results. And now that we are in fiscal year 2021, we will continue to scenario plan and refine projections for ridership and revenue expenses, of which I will share with you at a later point in time as well. That's the end of my report, Madam Chair.
All right. Are there any questions starting with DRPT?
No questions.
Okay. Members of the General Assembly?
No questions.
Okay. Prince William County?
No questions.
Stafford County?
No questions.
Manassas City?
No questions.
Manassas Park?
No, no questions.
Fredericksburg?
No questions.
And Spotsylvania?
No
No questions.
Okay, perfect. And now we'll move into item 7, public comment time. Public comments will not be received during this meeting, but those who wanted to submit comments, had the opportunity to do so by July 8th. Christine, were there any public comments?
No, Madam Chair, no comments were submitted.
Okay. We'll now move into item 8, the consent agenda. I'll explain what they are first, and then I'll ask if anyone would like to remove any item, and then we'll vote on those. 8.2 is our monthly motor fuels tax jurisdictional report through April 30th, something that we approve each month. And then 8.3 is allowing the city of Fredericksburg to use motor fuels tax funds for various transportation projects. So would anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Okay, is there a motion?
Move approval, Matt Kelly, Fredericksburg.
Second,
Second.
Dick Angry.
Seconded by Supervisor Angry.
Yes, ma'am.
Any discussion from DRPT?
No questions.
Members of the General Assembly?
No questions.
Prince William County?
No questions?
Stafford County?
No questions.
Manassas City?
No questions.
Manassas Park? Fredericksburg?
No questions.
Spotsylvania?
No questions.
There's a bag out in the closet.
Okay. Christine, will you call the roll?
Yes, Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Benny Smith,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Donald Shoemaker,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Meg Bumpke, I didn't hear a reply from Meg Bumpke.
Aye.
Thank you. Matt Kelly,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Aye.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
and George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
We'll now move into item 9, the executive director's time.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For our COVID-19 response and update, we're proud to announce that express service returning to our Friday service level has been in place for a few weeks now. We've returned to a Friday level of service for each weekday, which means we're operating at about 85% of our hourly services from our pre-COVID days. A reminder, OmniRide experienced a ridership loss of 95% in our commuter service and saw little meaningful increase until June when Northern Virginia began its phased reopening. We have seen minor ridership increases each week since June, recovering between 8 and 10% of lost ridership depending on the route, and are hopeful that the continued reopening of Virginia in phase 3 with no additional waves results in more passengers returning. Traffic volume and parking capacity are the two major issues driving commuter ridership. So until we see the strain in one or both of those areas, we can expect to see ongoing ridership and revenue challenges. At the local level, ridership still continues to be down, but at a much more robust ridership in comparison to commuter services. We continue to operate fare-free on local services as the fare loss is not as significant, but the fare collection does increase the dwell time for our operators, and the circulation of cash and coin does increase the risk of exposure when counting and depositing funds. We are cashless on our commuter services and are likely to remain that way for the foreseeable future. Our next benchmark in evaluating ridership recovery as well as fare collection on the local services will be the post-Labor Day ridership rates as schools, employers, and workforces respond to the virus and the telework models become more entrenched. Right now, we're still in that period where decisions are being made, but we will also have more concrete data on our fuel tax revenues and will begin preparing for longer-term responsiveness to trends and demands. Equally, if not more important, is the passenger and employee safety and our phased reopening steps. We remain focused on cleaning, and we're out with customers this week at our park and ride lots to say thank you with bottles of hand sanitizer, OmniRide branded, of course, as well as fans to stay cool on the hot afternoons on these 90-degree days. Feedback from customers was very thankful, and we fielded questions about cleanliness, distancing, service levels, and plenty of thank yous. And the majority of that appreciation was for our operators who have been on the road each day of the pandemic. We can't forget the technicians, we can't forget the dispatchers or the operations staff that are out there helping take care of our customers each day. We have reopened our lobby for customer questions only and have opened our vestibule for waiting. We have large floor decals, large plexiglass protective panels, and have placed distancing controls where possible throughout the facility. The Virginia created ahead of the CDC workplace safety mandates. So we've been really engaged in bringing in a lot of information for our employees and getting feedback. We're focused on signage and reminders for distancing to keep customers informed and employees safe. Internally, we've placed room capacity signage at each one of our break areas and offices. We have one-way arrows directing employees throughout the facility. We have face covering reminders, distancing reminders, as well as sanitizer and wipes throughout the building. We're evaluating employee responsibilities and reevaluating positions that can be longer-term telework in office or hybrid. We have already provided employee back-to-work training materials, including instructions for daily self-assessments for COVID-19 symptoms and protocols. A reminder that while we're talking about back to work, operators, technicians, and operational staff have been working in the operations area and in the field for months and have remained vigilant. So back to work is more about ensuring administrative employees returning to the facility do not expose our operational team to unnecessary risk, and that we care for each other's health just as we care about the health of ourselves, family, and friends. Passenger Rail Authority update. I ended up with a total of 9 names provided by the members of the commission, 9 names and resumes from the PRTC jurisdiction, and those have been sent to DRPT. At this time, no action has been taken. I will forward the resumes to the commissioners with the post-meeting summary so that everyone can see the names that were listed. Also bear in mind, this is not the only list of names, as other individuals could independently submit their names outside of this process. At this stage, we just wait for DRPT to update us regarding the Passenger Rail Authority and the appointments from the governor. On a federal legislative update, there has been no significant news in federal policy for new COVID-19 relief. The most recent federal legislation for transit is the INVEST Act, which is a 5-year surface transportation legislation with $105 billion for transit, $29 billion for Amtrak, and is expected to be considered by the full House in early July. So we'll be awaiting that. The major impact would be on the level of funding for capital assets and would impact both VRE and OmniRide funding for things such as facility improvements, vehicles, et cetera. And this is, of course, exclusive of any COVID-19 funding we have received so far, and also at this stage, exclusive of any future COVID-19 assistance. Finally, I have on the list Chuck's last meeting, retiring after 20 years in many roles. I use this informal verbiage to describe someone who is generally known as an informal guy. Many of the board members have come to know Chuck Steigerwald through his presentations on strategic planning and our various transportation demand management sessions. He's represented us on FAMPO for about the last 5 years or so, plus starting in late 2019, served as our Chief Development Officer to shape how our planning, marketing, and customer services interrelate. He retires at the end of August after 20 years of service, having about 20 different roles in the organization. I believe he started at the front desk, and he joins 2 other 2020 retirees, Son Amaker from the finance department and Mr. Leon Jordan, also a 20-year veteran. He was in our quality assurance department. Leon retired about 2 weeks ago after 25 years of the organization and 25 as a PRTC employee. We're sad to see these outstanding employees go. We're fortunate to have had their leadership, their friendship, and we do wish them the best. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you for that. And we'll be hearing from Chuck a little later, but I'll go ahead and say, thank you to him for his service to PRTC, now OmniRide, and obviously we wish him luck going forward. Are there any questions from DRPT?
No questions, but if anyone asks, I also have no update on the Passenger Rail Authority appointments. There may be an update at the VRE Operations Board next Friday if you want to tune into that. That's all.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the General Assembly?
No questions.
Prince William County,
No questions.
Stafford County,
No questions.
City of Manassas,
No questions.
Manassas Park.
I had a clarifying question. You said that all the OmniRide local buses are free at this point. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And how long do you foresee that going on? The rest of the summer, or?
We anticipate our next check-in will be by Labor Day. At Labor Day, we'll evaluate what is the options and opportunities. Just for clarification, our fare boxes are located at the front of the bus. And unlike most systems in the United States, we only have a front door opening. So it's a challenge as people board, they have to pay their fare in front of the driver. So with the heavy concern of that interaction, and our local fares do not generate a tremendous amount of revenue, as it were. So the impact is less severe, and just putting the health of the employees first and foremost. Secondarily, we're still trying to get some gauge from the banking community as to what level of cash circulation is safe, because if we have COVID-19 in the proverbial fare box, we're bringing it into the building and asking our employees to count that. So just balancing those things, but we will be looking at things such as mobile ticketing in a more expedited manner to possibly get around some of those hurdles, so we can recapture some revenue.
Well, and I only ask because it's a way we can encourage ridership in a point where it's free. People could use it and get used to where it goes and this kind of the structure of it. And so I will pass that on to other people that I know. And yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Manassas Park, any questions?
That was me.
Spotsylvania,
No questions
No
here.
questions.
in Fredericksburg,
No questions.
just give me a second. I pushed a bunch of buttons and now I'm confused. Just 1 second. Okay. All right, so now we'll go into item 10, presentations and information. Starting with item 10.1, the I-395-95 Commuter Choice Program Overview.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Ben Owen. I'm NBTC's Commuter Choice Program Manager. I'm happy to be with you tonight, if virtually, to give you an overview of the I-395-95 Commuter Choice Program, which you'll be seeing on your Commission meeting agendas over the next several months as we prepare for and carry out our second call for projects in the corridor. I know that many of you are new to the Commission, and since you as PRTC have a role in the program, I'll explain what the program is and what our respective Commission's roles are. And this should also help make clear why I, as an NBTC staff member, am presenting to you in relation to actions that you'll be asked to take. And finally, I'll outline what the next steps are that are coming up over the next few months. Just want to reemphasize there are no particular actions for tonight, and this is really just the start of my team's as well as PRTC staff's engagement with you on the program as we gear up for that call for projects. So a few high-level points you see on your screen about I-395-95 Commuter Choice. With apologies, this is a rather cluttered slide, but we'll take one chunk at a time here. This is the second expressway corridor in Northern Virginia in which a portion of toll revenues are available for investment in transportation projects that benefit the toll payers by moving more people through the corridor and creating viable, attractive multimodal commute options. The funding is awarded competitively based in large part on how well projects meet these goals. We have a similar program along I-66 inside the Beltway, solely administered by us at NVTC, that's been in place since 2017 and has funded a number of PRTC services and initiatives coming out of Western Prince William County. There's a wide range of eligible project types under Commuter Choice, including new and enhanced bus services, access to transit strategies, transportation demand management, carpool and vanpool strategies, bus and rail capital projects, including park and ride lots, and corridor roadway improvements. Key point is that any project we support must benefit the toll payers, And the clearest indication of that is the project's ability to move more people through the corridor in the peak period, peak direction. Our first round of projects in the 395-95 corridor was implemented last fall, along with the opening of the 395 express lanes. And I'll provide some more information about those projects in a moment. The toll revenues for this corridor come from Transurban, the express lanes concessionaire, and there's an annual payment schedule. We do expect full funding of somewhere around $30 million, maybe $35 million for the upcoming program. That payment is a term of Transurban's master agreement with the Commonwealth to operate the express lanes. And each call for projects we have now covers 2 fiscal years of funding. So the upcoming 395-95 call will be for fiscal years 22 and 23. And finally, eligibility for the funds stretches along the whole corridor through our respective jurisdictions. Both member jurisdictions and transit providers, including PRTC itself, WMATA, and VRE are eligible to apply for the funds. Next slide, please. So 395-95 Commuter Choice is a Commonwealth-initiated program that's delegated to our commissions to manage regionally. The main responsibilities shown on this slide are reflected in a 2017 Memorandum of Agreement between our commissions and the Commonwealth. So starting from the top, the Commonwealth has final approval authority over projects that the 2 commissions select. It receives and distributes the annual transit investment funds from Transurban and receives an annual report from us each fall on the Commuter Choice program. That report includes descriptions of the projects selected for funding and the expected benefits that were the basis for that selection. And beginning in 2 years, we will need to report on the actual performance of projects selected for funding. Moving a level down to the commissions adopt program policy, including the technical evaluation process by which proposed projects are scored. The commissions also select projects for funding and referral to the CTB based on eligibility and this approved process. And finally, the commissions approve transmittal of the annual report to the CTB. And for this corridor, our commissions basically take these actions in tandem. One aspect of this roles and responsibilities chart that I particularly want to highlight for tonight is the Joint Commission Working Group. This group serves as an intermediary between the full commissions and program participants in terms of applicants and recipients. The membership consists of 3 commissioners apiece from NVTC and PRTC, representing jurisdictions in the corridor. This group meets in advance of major actions by the commissions to discuss and deliberate what will be coming forth for full commission consideration. For instance, program policy changes, as well as draft selections of projects for funding. I'll talk about next steps with the upcoming call for projects in a moment, but we'll be looking for both commissions to identify members to serve on this group in short order so that we can have one-on-one introductory briefings with members next month. And one other point is that while our commissions take actions in tandem, we at NVTC at the staff level handle day-to-day management of the program and take the lead on developing items for the working group and both commissions' consideration. And there are a couple reasons for this. One is that PRTC is an eligible applicant for the corridor, and as you'll see in a moment, did quite well in our first round of funding. So this approach gives PRTC clearer latitude to be a funding recipient. And also just from efficiency reasons in that we're also managing I-66 Commuter Choice and trying to be as consistent between the corridors as possible in terms of policy and administrative approach, since we have a number of common eligible applicants in both corridors. And finally, the projects themselves are proposed and carried out by recipients who also have reporting responsibilities related to the program. Next slide, please. This is a schematic of the first round of funded projects, which began to be implemented last October in anticipation of the first day of tolling along the 395 express lanes in November. PRTC had 5 of the 10 funded projects in this round. Next slide, please. And that's largely a function of the evaluation process, which is friendly to transit services, particularly longer haul bus services. So what you see here is the evaluation process from our most recent call for projects, which was last fall on the I-66 corridor. And we'll get more into this process in our discussions over the next few months. But suffice to say for the time being that most of the possible points come from technical factors that really are getting at how well projects are aligning with the corridor improvement goals of moving more people more efficiently and creating viable, attractive travel options for commuters. For 395 round one, there was a significant emphasis on whether projects could be implemented by the first day of tolling in the 395 express lanes, and that's something that won't be applicable under future calls for projects. Next slide, please. This slide shows what's coming up in the next few months around preparing for and opening the round two call for projects. And this whole schedule is predicated on the CTB's adoption of the 6-year improvement program in June. As I mentioned, we'll be looking for both commissions to identify working group members soon so that we can conduct introductory briefings one-on-one in mid to late August. We'd then look to have a meeting of the full group, either in person or virtual, depending on what's most prudent at that point, on the upcoming call for projects and a set of program policy changes during September. These are changes that the Commuter Choice team has been developing, just briefed eligible applicants on, and will be looking to implement this fall. In October, we plan to brief both full commissions on the call for projects and the proposed policy changes, then seek the commission's approval to open the call and enact the final policy changes in November. And we would also begin applicant outreach around that same time. So the call for projects then would be open from November through January, and we would be working to develop the program of projects for funding next spring. So thank you for your time this evening, and I'm looking forward to engaging with you over the next several months regarding Commuter Choice, and happy to take any questions you have.
Are there any questions from DRPT?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Members of the General Assembly?
No questions.
Prince William County?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Lawson?
thank you. So last 2-year program was about 17 million, is that correct?
Yeah, that was basically covering about 1.5 years of funding.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you anticipate, such a dramatic loss in revenues due to the virus affecting the contract or the concessionaire payment, anything along those lines?
Yeah, at this point, we're anticipating that the full payments will come as planned. There was just an article in the Post last weekend about the impacts of COVID on toll revenues in the region. In that article, a Transurban representative indicated that they expected to make their payment to the Commonwealth this fall as scheduled. So it has been a significant issue in the I-66 corridor where we're dealing with revenue coming from VDOT after they pay their O&M expenses, and their toll revenue is obviously pretty low. But at this point, we're anticipating, no impacts at this time in the 395-95 corridor.
So Ben, is that simply because, Transurban has stated that, or are there legal protections built into the contract, or I appreciate that you're anticipating it, but that doesn't mean it's a guarantee.
Right. I mean, at this point, what I would go on from my level is what they had stated, as well as my understanding that payment is a term of their master agreement with the Commonwealth to operate the express lanes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bailey?
Yes, Ben, did I understand you to say that you were looking at latter part of August as the time frame to bring it forth?
We would be looking to brief members of the Joint Commission Working Group in mid to late August, and that would be sort of an introductory briefing, basically on a bit more on commuter choice, getting a bit more in depth into some of the things that I just went through in my presentation, as well as potentially starting to talk about some of the policy considerations that we're looking to put into place this fall.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else from Prince William County? Manassas City?
No questions.
Manassas Park? Stafford County?
No.
Fredericksburg,
No questions.
Spotsylvania,
No
I do.
questions.
I have a question,
You have
please,
a
for
question?
Ben. Hey,
Sure.
Mr.
Ben, do you
Skinner.
know, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Ben, do you know what portion of the meetings, like not portion, I'm sorry, and can you receive early meetings in August? I mean, if the people that were on it last year, now I know there's a lot of changeover, but I'm not sure. I represented the southern portion last year. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, and I will not be in town probably past the 20th of August.
Okay.
The way we can, I've got your information on hand here. Can I call you and see what we can do as far as setting up when we meet?
Yeah, we have some flexibility with that. So I think if we can, as members are confirmed, if we can try to meet sometime in mid to late August, that will work well. And we can, I'm around, others on my team are around. So I think we can
Okay.
make something work out.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and I think we are looking for 3 commissioners to volunteer to be on the joint working group. So Ben, do we need to figure that out now, or can people email myself and Bob by, we can give a deadline if necessary, if they're interested?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the latter is fine. I don't think we have to identify people on the spot, but if we can try to figure out in the next, say, week or two, just for the sake of starting to nail down scheduling those briefings.
Sure. So, if there's any commissioner that is interested in serving on the working group, then if you all could maybe email either myself or Bob by the 17th of July, which is about a week from now, then we can go from there.
Madam Chair, this is Gary. May I ask you a question, please?
Mr. Skinner?
Thank you. So, Ben, do you know how many people that were on this commission last year that are still around? Since a lot of it, Prince William, I'm not sure who was on it from Prince William last year.
Then Chair Anderson was on it, and also Commissioner Principi, I believe.
Okay, so
And yourself.
they're no longer on it, so they need it from there. So I would just say this: if there's anybody from Stafford or from Fredericksburg that would like to represent the southern portion, it's fine. If not, I would I would like to stay on the commission if possible.
Okay. All right. We will move to 10.2, the Transit Strategic Plan and Transportation Demand Management Plan. And I will turn it over to Mr. Steigerwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you and the Executive Director for your kind words earlier. So much for sliding out the side door, I suppose. With the forbearance of the Commission, I'll move quickly through the presentation so we're sure that we have sufficient time for any questions that might occur. The management is placing before the Commission this evening a request for authorization to begin the public participation process for the Transit Strategic Plan and the Transportation Demand Management Plan. These are the last pieces of our strategic planning process, which began in May of 2016. The first 4 slides within the presentation really just serve as reminders of where we've been and how we got to this point. Next, please. That's fine. There's the timeline when we started and how we moved through the first 2 phases, the strategic recommendations. The strategic recommendations really form the backbone of the work that proceeded past that point. Next. The Transit Strategic Plan and the Transportation Demand Management Plan are required by our funders at the Commonwealth, the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. But there were several other items that we tried to accomplish. The thing that I would point out most on this list, aside from the required piece of it, is that last. These plans are required to be updated annually. And that will help us keep all these other items in line as we move forward. Next, please. I'd like to start with the Transportation Demand Management Plan. That key theme you see listed there was pulled from the strategic recommendations. Next. These are the TDM recommendations from the strategic recommendation. They, as I said, they form the backbone. All of the goals, objectives, and strategies within the plan tie back to these recommendations in one form or another. Next. From those recommendations, we formed a series of goals for the Transportation Demand Management Plan. A big focus of the recommendations and hence of the goals and activities are centered around building partnerships and engagement opportunities with the community. Next, please. So we took the goals from the recommendations and built 3 buckets of activity. The first being increasing awareness and develop strategies and services that help us reach those targeted activities. Again, centered around outreach and targeted outreach, but also it's really important. One thing we've never done was actually tell our story well. We have very successful TDM programs, but only a few people know about it. We need to do a better job of telling our story. Developing that program narrative is a big piece. Next, please. We need to get out and build partnerships through our TDM activities, expanded outreach to the community, continue to work through our mobility councils to achieve results. And we really want to get an employer partners program established within the time frame of the Transportation Demand Management Plan. The last piece is leveraging technology. We really feel that the TDM programs are the house for innovation. That's where innovation should sit within the organization. So you see a number of technology-based solutions to help move the organization forward. Next, please. The last piece of the plan is how do you know what you're doing works? So we've devised a performance measurement regime which seeks to take all of the activities and put a number on it, defines the impact, and let us know whether what we're doing is working and how we're doing with the activities we're engaged in. Next, please. We're going to move on to the Transit Strategic Plan. Again, a key theme pulled from the strategic recommendations. Next. These are the recommendations from the transit focus area that were completed during the strategic plan process. Next. Just like with the TDMP, with the Transit Strategic Plan, we developed goals from those strategic recommendations. And these goals are centered around improving the quality of the customer experience on our transit services and ensuring to the best of our ability that the services that we are providing are safe, secure, equitable, and integrated with the surrounding transportation infrastructure. Next, please. From those goals, we build out a plan. On the transit side, we form things in time periods. One difference between the two plans is planning horizon. The TDMP is a 6-year plan. The Transit Strategic Plan is a 10-year plan. We divided these services up into short, mid, and long terms. I would remind at this point that these both are constrained plans. So there is nothing in here that we could not, what we felt to be reasonably define a funding source. So in the short term, we identified restructuring the local services on the eastern side of the county, using the lessons that we've learned with the restructuring recently completed on the western side of the county and the introduction of paratransit service, bringing those lessons learned into the denser areas of the eastern where we operate more service. There are enough, because the timeline in developing the plan is what it was. There are a number of items contained in the plan that we've actually moved forward on and completed. In the short term, those include the Western local service restructuring, some of the services on the I-66 that we've leveraged the I-66 commuter choice funding for, and the I-95, 395 commuter choice program for. Next slide, please. In the midterm, we'll again seek to leverage those outside funding sources, which will include the commuter choice programs in either corridor, and also new funding from the construction and completion of the express lanes outside the Beltway on I-66. There are several other events. There's the construction of a new parking facility in the Woodbridge area. We'll seek to leverage that with new services on the I-95 corridor, the opening, of course, of the I-66 express lanes and the completion of the Western maintenance facility, the introduction of new park and ride facilities on I-66 to expand the services there in cooperation with our partners at the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And finally, in the midterm, introducing limited new commuter express service into the Union Station, Noma area in Washington, DC. Next, please. Finally, capping off that 10-year horizon as planned at the moment would be the potential for introducing service out in the Manassas area between the city of Manassas, the Old Town area, and the innovation area, George Mason University and the businesses located out there. Next, please. Just as with the TDMP, we've devised a regime for measuring our performance, which includes factors of ridership, cost efficiency, safety, system coverage, service quality, and service availability. These measurements are both in line with the DRPT requirements and are also sensible and reasonable measurements for any transit system. Next, please. As I mentioned, this would complete our 4-year trek on the strategic plan. I, for one, will be glad that it's over. I think that it accomplishes what we set out to accomplish at the beginning of this, moving the organization in the direction that I think is good to go. If you would please advance to the last slide there. This is simply the timeline, the work we have left to do, beginning the public participation process and completing the public participation process, returning to the commission, hopefully at the September meeting, for endorsement of these 2 final pieces of the strategic plan effort. Then we can focus completely on implementation of the plans. And within a actually very short period, we'll be doing our first annual update to refresh the plan, bring in any new ideas and respond to any new conditions. And next, please. That completes the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission has. And just briefly say it's been my pleasure for 20 years to serve under the commission.
Thank you, Chuck. We appreciate that. Are there any questions from DRPT?
No questions. This is obviously a DRPT requirement. It was also mandated by the General Assembly in 2018. And so the reason I think believe it's taken as long as it has, we've always required our transit agencies to do a transit development plan. All agencies have to do that. In 2018 with the new legislation and our guidelines, we decided that the larger transit agencies, we wanted to see a little bit more from their planning. So we created these strategic these transit strategic plan guidelines. And so PRTC was actually in the early phases of doing a TDP update, and they volunteered to go ahead and transition over to a transit strategic plan. So we appreciate them doing that and all the work that's gone into it. And certainly want to congratulate Chuck on his retirement, and we will definitely miss him at the RPT. Thanks.
All right. Any questions from members of the General Assembly?
No questions.
Okay. Prince William County,
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bailey.
Chuck, thank you for your strategic
And
plan.
then Supervisor Bailey, before you get started, if we can mute ourselves if we're not speaking. Go ahead, Supervisor Bailey.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chuck, thank you for the strategic plan. And you ended as if you're going somewhere. You're not leaving. No comment.
I'm not sure what to say to that.
No, but thank you. It was very thorough. Thank you so much. And the best to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bailey.
Madam Chair.
I heard a voice. I can't see a face.
That's it's Supervisor Bodie here. I think I'm
Supervisor Bodie.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Did you have a question?
One, yes. I first wanted to announce that I'm here. Sorry I'm late. I ran in from a town hall I was having, but wanted to. I watched quite a bit of this. I was going through the slides before I jumped on. Thank you, Chuck, for this. I just wanted to offer a comment. You know, it's great that we're having strategic planning done. You know, obviously this our transit system is an important part of making sure we're delivering quality service to our constituents. And this is very thorough, and I'm very excited for us to be working together to move this forward. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Lawson.
Thank you. Hey, Chuck, first of all, I want to thank you for your years of service to our community. I know you've been working on the strategic plan for a long time, so thank you for all of your deep analysis and thought, and receiving input from so many stakeholders. So I just want you to know you're leaving on a great note. So thank you very much, and I hope you do enjoy retirement. I got one question for you. With the George Mason University Science and Technology Campus out of innovation and the growth, which I know you're familiar with the growth plans at that campus, and we've got the Innovation Town Center going through the planning department, and don't want to commit the board to any type of rezoning before it comes to us, but there's a strong likelihood that we're going to see a lot of growth in that area from the business perspective, the campus and residential as well. Is there a reason why in the transportation development plan you didn't have anything out there till like 2027?
Well, the reason quite simply was a projected projected revenue sources and how we might use those, but also including that development that we frankly at this point just aren't sure of. That's right. That the beauty of the annual update allows us to make those changes to bring forward projects as conditions change. This plan does not consist of stone tablets, right? Brought down from the mountain. These are lines on a map. And if things can be lined up in a way that accelerates the program. But innovation's a great example, I think, of how the the transportation demand management plan and that outreach to businesses and to the campus at GMU and eventually to the residents of the town center, how that and the transit plan and the transit services will work together to achieve that result. I would expect that what happens in innovation can go a long way to providing a blueprint for how those sorts of things are developed, not just on our end, but with our partners out in that area.
Okay, so of course, we all know a lot always boils down to money. And then good to know that, you know, this is something that will be updated, looked at annually. So thank you, Chuck. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any questions from Manassas City?
I just want to make a statement that, Chuck, I really appreciate all your work on strategic planning. I kind of came in after the plan was put into place, but you know, planning is what makes things happen effectively and efficiently. And I really appreciate the work that you've put forward in helping me understand strategic planning as well. And I really appreciate your service to the organization and to our communities.
All right. Questions from Manassas Park?
Yes, I wanted to ask if there's been some thought, because this is a kind of a longer range document, about realigning the West End, some of the West End Omni-Ride Express and things with the Route 28 expansion. It's like Fairfax already has their plans in place and has funding, so they're going to go to 6 lanes on their side of the bridge. And it looks like the process on the Prince William side is picking up steam. It's not fully approved, obviously, but it looks like there's movement on which plan that will likely get green lighted. Because currently the buses that go, let's say, to Tyson's or the Vienna Metro, they're being routed down Sudley Road, because I was always told that 28 was so backed up that they couldn't manage bus routes in a timely manner because there was so much traffic that it was very difficult to keep them on schedule. One of our actually resident, he's now moved to the county, but he was one of our residents in Manassas Park, had proposed creating a bus line on the 28 corridor using the VRE garage in Manassas Park as effectively a park and ride until the VRE ridership grows to a point where they need the full garage. That would give a lot more opportunities in that 28 corridor, whether they're going to Metro or whether they're going north toward the Dulles area. Has there been some thought about, because we would like to see, as soon as the expansion of 28 happens, that people are on buses and it doesn't just induce a bunch more cars that just creates it, you know, in a few years it'll be backed up to what it is now. Has there been some thought about realigning bus routes on the 28 corridor once the expansion is complete and it's more advantageous for Omni-Ride to run buses in that corridor?
I would certainly raise the issue of a funding source here. In the 66 corridor for our expansion plans, what we've identified them based on plans that have come through the Commonwealth, through DRPT, as part of the Transform 66 project. We expect that will be the main funding source for what happens in the 66 corridor. At one time, when originally done back in 2015, and Mr. Horsley can correct me if I'm off on my dates a little bit, but in 2015, there was the original effort to build a transit and TDM plan for the express lanes in the 66 corridor, which would have included some service that we would be asked to run to areas in the 28 corridor, like Westfields, for example. But further up into the Dulles area, Herndon, Reston, there were actually a number of routes that were recommended into that area at various times throughout the course of that plan. In the revisions for that plan, those routes were removed, and the concentration will be mainly on the existing services that are out there, enhancing, really to maximize the express lanes themselves and the infrastructure that's been built to support them. Those, for the first time ever, there's appreciable park and ride space in that corridor, with huge lots with the potential to absorb a lot of activity. So the key to operating service on 28 would be identifying a funding source, which we have not done. The reliability of that road remains a question, I think, at least in my mind, but that's not necessarily something that can't be overcome. We can take a look and see what actually happens to that roadway. If people go back, they'll go back quickly, right? With people returning, it's solo drivers on that road. I think we could probably all agree on that. And it may serve to, as you say, put us back in the same situation that we are in today. But we will look and we will consider, again, it's been considered in the past, we simply don't have a funding source for it to include it in this plan.
Well, absolutely, and I can appreciate that. We're all elected officials. We only have so much money to work with. One thing I guess two things I would say is, one is we have a lot of people who are doing suburb to suburb commuting who are not being met with the current needs, where it's more DC focused, or, as you say, 66 corridor, 95 corridor. Those are very important. I don't want to take anything away from them, but not everybody commutes in that fashion. There are a lot of people that are doing the Manassas area to Chantilly or to Reston or to Herndon, and there's no option for them, and they drive because there is no other option. And secondly was the thought that the part of what my question was, is not that we would need more money, is that we would take some of the buses that are running down Sudley Road to go to 66. Those could be repurposed to the 28 corridor, and it wouldn't be necessarily more cost. It would just be a revision of current service.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. I will state quite plainly, though, that the services that we've been running out of the Gainesville area, we simply can't afford to take service away. We can't afford really to reroute those services. They run really close to capacity. That it would be, and by shifting them over, for example, to 28, even if they started at the park and rides out there, you would lose any time advantage. It's a known that 66 is different than the 95 corridor, and part of that difference is the way the development patterns occurred, the expansion of commercial development into the 66 corridor. When you think about Tyson's and Dulles, Chantilly, Herndon now, Reston, those areas, soon to be the innovation area in Fairfax, and with the newer residential development in Prince William County, and how those two things have coincided. And so the trip making pattern is much more varied in the 66 corridor than it is in the 95 corridor, right? It just is. There is a lot more of that suburb to suburb commute. That's certainly something we'd have to look at. One of the things we've learned from those shorter commutes in the 95 corridor is there's not as much incentive from a time savings or other incentives particularly in the 28 corridor when you throw in the acres and acres of free parking at places like Westfield. It's just the inducements to get on that bus just aren't as great as they are for those longer distance commutes. But I think that's a question we'll have to answer in the context of going through the process of updating the plan. But certainly, Commissioner, I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
And Chuck, thank you for that. I will say it is something that I do want to look more into. We've gotten a couple of emails with regards to Route 28 and the 66 corridor with regards to this plan. So I do want to make sure that we're at least thinking about it as we go forward. But we can talk more about that as we progress. Are there any questions from Stafford?
No questions.
Spotsylvania?
I don't have no questions.
In Fredericksburg?
Yeah, a quick point. Chuck, I want to go back to two comments you made in the presentation. You made the point that we need to tell the transit story better, and the issue that you've mentioned about performance measures. The focus has always been on the bus system and VRE. Okay, so I serve on both boards, but very little is said or really talked about with regards to the van pools and the slugging. Could you give me your thoughts on how important, from a performance measure standpoint, both slugging and the van pool services are for movement in our corridors?
Well, if I could start with slugging, because I think I can probably move through that a little more quickly. No one knows. No one knows how many people actually participate. Prior census attempts have put the number at about 10,000 individuals within the 95 corridor. But it's a major activity. There are most probably, in my belief, there are more people engaged in that activity, more trips, more passenger trips in that activity than ride our buses, than ride VRE in the 95 corridor. Obviously on the 66 corridor, for a number of reasons that are well known, which I would be happy to explain to folks if they really wanted to know. But slugging is almost virtually non-existent there. It's much more ad hoc and not as stable as it is in the 95 corridor, but the activity is significant. The effort to measure that, though, would be significant as well. You would have to do a detailed census, probably at quarters, to get a real sense, and you would have to build a baseline. So it would be, in my view, a significant undertaking to quantify that. Not saying that it wouldn't be valuable, because in my personal opinion, there would be value to putting a number on that, to understand in terms of how much pollution it eliminates, how many lane miles it keeps you from having to build, all of those measures that we've heard through time. What is the real impact of that particular activity on the transportation network? I would want to know that. Van pooling, fortunately now, we have a database. We have pretty much any measurable data point that you would want as referring to van pool service in the 95 and I-66 corridors. We have that by virtue of the Van Pool Alliance program. That program is centered around van pools, reporting data to us and extended to the National Transit Database. We know now what that impact is. In years previous, we were guessing. We were taking best guess in what can be a very fluid situation. Now we know. We have the metrics. It will be part of the measurement that our TDM programs provide. But Vanpool Alliance has that data and can express it easily.
And how important is the van pools for traffic mitigation on the 95 corridor?
Again, they are similar to slugging in their importance, but they fill a different niche, of course, right? What van pools do really, really well are really long distance commutes, of course, but they can serve those places effectively, those locations, particularly work locations, that transit cannot serve effectively, right? It's an old story that you start a van pool before you know whether you're going to put a bus route in, right? So you build that ridership, but that's not necessarily what you want to be using van pools for, right? That van pools can provide their own service as it is. But they are really, really good at hitting those niche locations that have a significant number of employees and are responsible for a significant number of trips, but they're isolated or they're secure and not necessarily accessible easily by transit. So the niche that they fill in the transportation network is vitally important. It takes those trips off that transit can't.
Thanks, Chuck, and thank you for all your service. And I think it's just important, especially for the newer members, we get focused on trains, we get focused on buses and bus routes, but there are other options that are out there that are having a significant impact, especially for us in the southern jurisdictions and moving people up and down the 95 corridor. And sometimes in our discussions, we do lose sight of those options. And I'm hoping as we move forward that we will continue to focus on other options beyond just buses and trains. Thank you.
And Chuck, I do want to move on, but just a couple of things that I'll point out, and if you can just take 30 seconds to address. I noticed in the presentation for both the strategic management as well as the demand management, there was information to have the resources sent out in English and Spanish. If we can just make sure that that's sent out in additional languages as well. As we know, Prince William County, incredibly diverse, and there may be a need for more language services in addition to both English and Spanish. And then obviously we did get rid of the slugging grant that we were looking to move forward on. And I know we wanted to encourage more slugging on the 66 corridor. So if you can just address that really quickly on kind of what the plans are to address slugging now that we don't have the grant. And if you just take 30 seconds or less to kind of address some of those.
I apologize. I actually thought I removed that from the presentation, to be honest with you. But we do think, I spoke earlier, and really quickly, I spoke earlier about the process of planning for transit and TDM services in that corridor. And during that process, it was a point made repeatedly that in order to maximize the efficiency and the effectiveness of those managed lanes, of the express lanes, we needed to the extent possible, duplicate the culture, the commuter culture in the I-95 corridor and adapt it for I-66, which included the accommodation of slugging. And I really think that's important. There are headwinds for that activity in I-66, dispersal of employee sites and things like that. But I think a healthy system can still develop over there. We will help encourage the development of that in the ways that we have worked with the slugging community up to this point. Basically assistance with promotion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I appreciate your presentation. We'll move on now to 10.3, the operations and maintenance contract structure and development, and I will turn it over to Dr. Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Franklin. Commissioners, you've all seen the contract materials for the staff recommendation for a new operations and maintenance contract with Keolis Transit America. The resolution and support memo provides a background of the procurement process and separately the formal contract, including the pricing schedule. These have both been reviewed extensively by our procurement department and our legal counsel, Sharon Pandak. The summary is to help understand the framework of the contract itself. The staff recommendation is to award the contract to Keolis Transit America. Keolis is also the provider of VRE's maintenance and operations program for the 2 train lines, and they've been providing these services for them for 10 years, recently receiving a contract extension for the VRE by the VRE Operations Board, which includes joint membership of the PRTC and NVTC commissioners. This contract is a 5-year base term with 5 option years that can be exercised in any combination. But this contract is structurally different in terms of our cost modeling in 2 key ways, which I'll review more deeply. One was planned in advance of the procurement process and the other in response to the pandemic. This is really a roadmap of the key issues as we move forward as an organization, especially in terms of new contract goals and how we approach the economics of our services. And these are some of the things that we'll dive into. Currently, First Transit provides service for us under a revenue hour model, which means essentially operator driving time when available to transport a passenger. So that's from the point at which they're picking up their first passenger to the last possible drop-off. This excludes travel time from, for example, Woodbridge to Gainesville or Woodbridge to Manassas. And this model is often used for commuter services where there's a large service area with a wide variation of possible deadhead. Deadhead being the time from when an operator leaves the garage with their bus and gets to their first point in service. This approach was designed to create efficiency in the deadhead by the operational contract staff, in this case, First Transit, and has been successful because we've operated exclusively from a single facility and mostly on I-95. This type model includes our flex route deviation model, our local service, and also included cost calculations from a procurement in 2012 and 2013. And for perspective, that was steeped in the Great Recession. As described, the hourly rate includes deadhead time and is subject to an annual 3.8% flat rate increase currently. The vast majority of that increase tied to labor and parts cost fluctuation, including health insurance. We do provide the fuel, so that gives us a little more stability in terms of this. So shifting away from this model was considered during PRTC's fiscal crisis of 2015 and 2016, and the severe route reductions that occurred at that time, as the service levels were unstable due to the lack of a motor fuels tax floor on the per gallon cost. We also have a strange anomaly where we're essentially buying bulk service hours from our provider. And what we're doing is when you buy the bulk packages of revenue hours, there's built-in costs such as supervision, payroll provision, maintenance, management. As you see in the red circle on slide 6, when we increase the size of, in theory, the bulk order, the rate reduces. And anyone who's bought anything in bulk understands that. This is not a situation where we are incurring a commodity that can be used later, like a gallon of fuel or a box of paper. This is a time-based expense. So once the hour is purchased, it's expended. And so this type of structure is very normal in transit, and it creates an incentive for systems to add more hours of service and providers to find new ways for efficiency. The challenge is with this model, if you'll stay on that for just a few extra seconds. The challenge we face with this is there's an example of when we have 675 hours, our current estimated cost is about $22 million a year, $22,460. Well, then if we find an efficiency in our service adjustment and we can trim an hour out of service, our costs actually go up simply because it's these thresholds and tiers. And again, this is very normal in transit, but again, it disincentivizes us for reducing our service load. So why change? A couple of different things. Why procure a year early? This contract is due to expire, I believe next year, but there's 2 real things moving us forward. The system and the region are very different from 2003, when the shell of this RFP was crafted and created, and then refined in 2013. We re-examined other approaches, evaluated what was coming forward, and identified a 2019-20 procurement timeframe as a key opportunity to reshape our future. In particular, the Western facility and the growth of the I-66 services, both present and planned, drove a big part of this decision process, in addition to incorporating new flexible models of service not even contemplated in 2013. We entered into the process with a September RFP outlining standards of performance, goals for inclusion of technology, service design, innovation, and a new approach to our employee culture. Mainly everyone being together under the OmniRide umbrella and less a focus on the culture of client versus contractor, which had previously existed. Emphasis on innovative ways to meet transportation needs was essential, but without sacrificing the core business model of safe, reliable, clean buses driven by talented and committed employees to get our customers to work, home, and play. With excellent maintenance, engaged field support, and management that knows how to communicate with fairness and accountability. Our RFP document was extensive, with federal compliance regulations, reporting requirements, incentives, and contract deductions, also known as liquidated damages, to outline mutual success. We established minimum qualifications for key management, but left an open structure for an approach to managerial staffing and encouraged creativity and approaches to service delivery. We asked for excellence in hiring, training, and employee support. We also maintained our expected standard for safety excellence, on-time performance, cleanliness, and operational maintenance. And we received responses, and for example, this is Keolis's response. It is, I believe, a 3-inch binder, and it's pretty darn full. So if you can see that. So this isn't a case where it was, you know, a pamphlet sent in response. It was quite the contrary. We had staff serve as the evaluation committee, do rankings and key criteria, which is all outlined in your memo. The change in the rate structure is provided graphically on 2 slides, number 9 and number 10. These show 2 different examples of commuter service, each one servicing different corridors. I do want to point out these are not actual costs of a revenue hour and a platform hour. This is just for exemplar purposes, since this transition can be a little bit in the weeds. We examined the variables of both platform and revenue hours. Again, the platform is time of the driver behind the wheel, regardless of whether in deadhead or revenue, versus the revenue hour. And we looked at those in terms of the cost of an Eastern and Western version. We used different cost rates projected based on our total number of hours. And then we included our local services, which makes up about 30% of services, but have a disproportionately higher cost. The reason they have a higher cost is we're paying a much larger rate to include deadhead. Well, now that we start evaluating this with the Western services and the new Western facility and local routes, based upon the lower cost of operation, we're able to offset some expenses at the new facility, but without the platform hours, we do not take advantage of the efficiencies. So that just gives 2 examples of how we did the analysis on both slide number 9, as well as slide number 10, a lot of algebra, calculation, review, and analysis. This decision was made prior to moving into the procurement. This is not something that was done mid-course. Again, this was something that was evaluated in 2015, 2016 when the Western facility was first envisioned, but now as we're approaching a fall opening date, we're ready to move forward with this. So on our next slide, we went through a best and final offer evaluation of pricing. So we received the proposals, all the scores were ranked by the evaluation committee. The committee included internal staff as well as an external staff member from Prince William County Transportation Office. Recommendations were received and they were independent, scoring was independent of pricing. Pricing was then received under a separate cover, scored, and Keolis was ranked the highest bidder, most responsive. We also conducted a best and final process so we could identify different cost responses and give the 3 firms that submitted an opportunity to make adjustments to those financial estimates, providing information. And again, even after this step, Keolis remained the most responsive bidder. We entered into negotiations only to have all processes pretty much ground to a halt by the pandemic. After consultation with legal and examination of procurement steps, we used an existing price sheet that was already inside the procurement process to move into what is called a fixed and variable fee model for the first year of the contract that gives us an opportunity for stable cost management by isolating known and fixed fees. This was a document that we had already created to help understand which bidder was providing what costs in what area. So this was something that was already built into our procurement process. And what we did is work with Keolis to identify what were the fixed fees, such as salary, fringe for salary, insurance, licenses, administrative expenses, IT overhead expenses, and associated costs. So those are fixed fees. The variable fees are for services with a shared reward. This is designed to be nearly a pass-through cost in terms of predominantly operator and technician labor, that's the driver and mechanics, parts and insurance. By separating into these two categories, we can now predict our cost in what has really been a hyperfluid COVID-19 environment for us. We've been through, I think, 4 different service levels since March. And as a result of that, there was a point in time as we were reducing services, our cost per hour was increasing. So we were having an inverse relationship in terms of cost management. We separated those items so that we could better understand our cost calculations. And by placing these into clear categories, we're not actually having to pay the extra cost. We can shrink or grow our routes to match our ridership, and we don't have to rely on overloaded hourly rates, which is norm in the industry. We're not unique in the industry. The entire industry has been hit with this, that contracts out service. So by placing the costs into clear categories, lets us move forward. We will evaluate this model at the end of FY21 and make a decision to continue on this path, or we can revert to the single platform hour if we are back to quote unquote normal and an all-inclusive hourly rate, which we currently operate on, but it would still be done in the platform model. And of course, this would be based on the operating environment. Plus, this also reduces risk in that if Keolis, being the new provider, is able to come in and identify costs that they overestimated, we receive the benefit of that because these are passed through. There's not built-in mistakes or overestimations of cost allocation. So this is it reduces their risk in terms of the hourly rate, but we also gain the benefit of it, and it gives us more opportunity to manage our costs in the COVID-19 environment. More importantly, during the pandemic, we really focused on this near-term cost model because also we don't know when services will increase in the Western facility. And what we did not want to do is start paying a higher hourly rate earlier in the fiscal year, even though the Western facility is not yet open. A larger rate would have incurred a lot of additional costs that we would not be ready for on a November 1 start date. So recapping the process, we have successfully developed a new cost model of calculation in a pre-COVID environment that came in on budget. So we had developed that prior to that was before COVID-19 really was a word for us. And then more importantly, during the pandemic, we negotiated a near-term cost model that once again brings us in on budget with room to begin mid-year operation at our new Western facility slated to open sometime this fall. One thing, slide 15, one thing not included in the original RFP was a COVID-19 mitigation plan. When we crafted this document in September, we of course had continuity of operations planning identified, we had maintenance planning, but COVID-19 wasn't there. That will be a requirement of service on day 1. We have already received a draft COVID-19 mitigation plan from Keolis. That will be developed in conjunction with our quality assurance staff and our safety and security manager for the purpose of prior to delivering service, we can have the fleet maintained, our facility maintained, our employees safe, our customers safe, and Keolis will begin on November 1st, 2020, allowing for more than 3 months to communicate with employees, ensure employee orientation, provide necessary training, ensure benefits are provided, and provide the readiness so that employees understand what is happening and have opportunities with Keolis. One of the most common questions that we would expect to hear tonight is, well, what about the employees? With nearly 250 qualified and talented employees, there's expected to be near universal hiring of employees should they be interested in remaining under the OmniRide service brand. In the past, going through these type processes, you may have retirements, or you may have people who just would prefer to stay with First Transit and migrate to a different contract or something like that. But in my experience, I'm hitting almost now, more than 20 years now, it is almost near universal hiring of employees. Again, we've got the experience, we have the talent, we have the training, and we have the loyalty already wearing the OmniRide brand. And we would just love to have those employees back doing the same thing with Keolis. So Chair Franklin, I'm happy to answer questions. If there are questions specific to Keolis as a company or their process, I did want to notify the commissioners and welcome Aline Franzen, the CEO of Keolis Transit America, along with Mr. Brian Youngworth and Mr. Mike Ake, also of Keolis Transit America, who are all on the call to answer questions.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Schneider, for the address, and to Keolis, welcome to our OmniRide meeting. I was just going to start off in thanking you for addressing what will happen to employees, and it sounds like they will have the opportunity to switch over if they choose, and they will have the ability to keep their job. So that's very good. I do want to also just highlight, and this is more so to Keolis, the expectation that, with the new contract, I think it would be great to also start almost with a new culture with regards to bus operations and just culture of the company amongst employees. We've had a lot of challenges in the past, and so some of that may mean different management decisions. Some of that may mean different processes for bus operations and other operational issues. And so that's something that I want to make sure that we're very clear about, that we expect a different culture moving forward. And so with that, I will turn over to questions, starting with DRPT.
No questions. Thank you.
Members of the General Assembly.
I have a question, Madam Chair. This is Delegate Guzman.
Delegate Guzman. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Bob, for the presentation. And I'm excited about the brighter future for the service in Prince William County. I just have a follow-up questions because I think you addressed this in broad terms. And I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. We're touching on, I see a combination of first bringing this new contractor, but then at the same time, innovation of services within the Eastern services and the Western services. So on the Eastern services, I saw you mentioning paratransit, including taxis. Could you tell us more? What is that? What is your vision about that?
Sure.
I need to know, sorry.
So an example of that is we've been using taxi vouchers for Wheels to Wellness. And so the use of Uber, TNCs, the Uber Lyft via companies like that, they weren't even part of the conversation or discussion for regular transit operations back in 2013. They were really new to the market. Our vision is, as we've migrated to remapping our services in the Western corridor, we've learned a lot in terms of feedback from customers asking where they want to go, what do they need, what is the future, how could we survive budget crises by turning service volumes up, turning service volumes down, and then also adding flexible services such as we do ADA paratransit. It makes our service more reliable. It also gives us more flexibility for persons with disabilities. What this also allows us to do is look at flexible zones. So we can have, instead of a bus transporting a handful of people, we can have a vehicle dedicated to a much larger service area. It doesn't take away the fixed route vehicle per se, but what it does is it complements and allows services to deliver. Our vision for the eastern part of the community really is three parts of it. One is the Lake Ridge community, and that corridor, Route 1, of course, which is our Eastern Services bread and butter, and then of course Dale Boulevard. Those three locations really make up the lion's share of our services, but we have very important pockets in the Minnieville community, the Hoadley Road community, critical in Quantico, but then you have the tucked away areas such as Fuller Heights that have true demand and true need for transit. So what we want to be able to have is firms that have experience helping us deliver flexible services by either us working with them to contract for like an Uber or Lyft type agreement, or them bringing to market what is called microtransit, which is that on demand, as if we were directly operating that Uber or that Uber Lyft type program. They deploy technology, so it's mobile ticketing, it's scheduling on your phone just like you might an Uber, but that doesn't eliminate the need for the fixed route bus. There is that need when you walk out in Woodbridge on Route 1 that you can still stand at that bus stop and catch your ride to get to the grocery store, work, the doctor appointment. And of course, let's not forget about the thousands of customers that rely on us to get into the DC area every day once we have a post-COVID-19 world.
Madam Chair, just follow-up comment, if I may.
Delegate Guzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to make sure that I just, as a resident of the eastern side for a long time, I just haven't seen that we have increased services on the eastern service, and I do not want to. I would not want to see those replaced with an Uber or Lyft service. As you mentioned, I mean, I would like to experience the fact that I could take a bus to go to the grocery store. I think that we have Planning and Zoning working with VDOT really hard to put in even more walking and traffic lights where you could actually are making your walk safer. But we are still need that complement of what about catching your bus to
No
go
doubt.
to places. So, okay, as long as we still explore that because we haven't experienced it yet, I just don't want to see us, of course, not to disregard any type of services with the individuals with disabilities or the senior citizens for their different doctor's appointments on Meals on Wheels. But I just don't want to see us competing with Uber or Lyft because we just would never be able to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course, and I will also add, your question kind of complements a little bit of the presentation that we just had with regards to demand management, the strategic plan, and that we are looking to increase services on the 234 corridor. And so that should help a lot. So thank you for your question. Any additional questions from the General Assembly? Okay, Prince William County.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bodie.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, Dr. Schneider, for this presentation. Wanted to welcome our new partners in this. Wanted to echo what Madam Chair said in regards to sort of a change and tweak in tone in regards to management and leadership. Obviously, you know, there were some friction here and there with some of the issues that propped up with First Transit. And so that leads me into a question. Since I see Delegate Guzman here, my question for you, Dr. Schneider, and for our new partners is, has AFSCME, the union, been engaged with this new contractor yet? And if not, is that in the plans yet?
So I'll answer this part of it. At this stage, it's presumptive, but I will turn it over to Keolis to map out their approach to that in terms of contacting the union and coordinating with the union.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. This is Brian Youngworth with Keolis and Chair Franklin, members of the commission. Yeah, AFSCME 3003, I believe it's 3001. We've we haven't not spoken with them yet. We do have copies of the collective bargaining agreement, and it's our intent to honor all those provisions. And after the vote, once we have the contract executed, the first thing we do, actually, our HR director that deals with our union agreements is I'm supposed to contact him right after this meeting. That's the first thing he plans to do tomorrow, is reach out to Gwen Robinson and the other union members to talk to them about the existing agreement.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just one follow up.
Supervisor Bodie.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that because as many folks on here know, one of the friction points occurred last year where there was an impasse with the renewal of the contracts and the agreement with the AFSCME union and some of their folks. And obviously that led to quite a bit of disruption in service, and we obviously don't want that sort of issue to happen again. So I'm pleased and delighted to know that you guys are already thinking about that, and I think that's sort of already part of the change in tone in leadership and management that I think Madam Chair was referring to. So yeah, I know, absolutely looking forward to working with you folks, and thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
I think I heard Supervisor Angry first and then Supervisor Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Bob, thanks for this presentation. You know, this was a hot topic, and so I'm really happy to see, I don't want to say this wrong, Keolis, am I saying that right, Brian? Keolis, okay. So really happy to see you all. You know, this is one of the things that I had been really just passionate about is our bus drivers. I want to be specific when I say bus drivers, because I know it says you're going to work with employees. And I don't know what all that entails, if there's other levels of management that we're looking to make over, but I specifically want to speak to those drivers because they're the ones that make this operation work, right? And so I know they were the ones that were caught up in the crossfires, if you will, of all of this before. So I want to once again be specific with them and the fact that, you know, and bringing them over, if that's what they should so choose to do, that we look at that. And it sounds to me like Supervisor Bodie or Commissioner Bodie just said that you're going to work with the union to make sure we obligate some of those contractual agreements. So I want to put that out there because that's been a hot spot. Just a second piece, you know, to Commissioner Guzman's point, the you know, some of those services like Uber. Remember, we were working at first last mile, right? Some of those neighborhoods that I walk these on the campaign trail, and we have folks that have to walk out to these bus stops from some of these deep bedded neighborhoods. So is a part of that what she was talking, is that some of the plan too, that we were discussing some other modes of transportation to get folks maybe from their homes out to the bus stops, or how we can make that, how we could take our bus services, our OmniRide service, and really just, you know, cover it all. Is there a plan to continue that?
Well, a big part of that is the transportation demand management, the transit strategic plan, the very things that were presented tonight. The single biggest challenge, and I think you already know what this is funding. So, you know, here it's a scenario where just as we start to get poised to make big change, we're dealt with a new fiscal pandemic. It seems about every 4 or 5 years, the organization gets its knees taken out from it. However, we are committed to protecting our local services, where historically that has been the first victim of the budget cut per se. This has been a really unique, I guess everyone's been watching Hamilton, but it's the world turned upside down in transit, and that historically when things go wrong, the local service gets hit, but the commuter services does well. Because of this unique environment, the local services have been outperforming the commuter services nationwide. And what it has shown is when you have almost a complete shutdown of government operations, when you have everything closing down, but the bare necessities of grocery stores, hospitals, who was out there? Transit. Who was out there? Medical workers. So what it truly does is it redefines, especially in the Prince William community, not just the vibrancy, not just the lifeline service, but the actual genuine meaning of what mass transit means across the entire Prince William community, including Manassas Park. So we are working at every juncture to preserve that local service. So we're not in a situation where we're trying to claw that back over the next 5 years. If we can protect and preserve, then when we have the opportunity to grow, it's called the budget process, and we'll be seeing you next year.
As you will. Madam Chair, if I just one quick follow-up.
Sure.
Okay, so Bob, you talked about Dale City, you know, of course, that corridor is a very important corridor. So I just wanted to, I don't know if we talked about this or I made you aware, but I got a study out there. We're probably going to do a pilot program where I'm looking for a dedicated bus lane to run that route. And so I don't know if you've been involved with that, but Rick Canizales is looking at that. We should probably be going through that soon, but I just want, because I want to try to make the bus system as efficient as we can to get the maximum, as you know, some of those stops we had to turn off because getting all the way to the other end down here on Hoadley on my end, going back up was a lot of traffic and people weren't really doing that. So I want to work with you to really try to improve that Dale Boulevard corridor to make it efficient for the bus service. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Madam
and just
Chair.
a time check. We're about 12 minutes from 9, so just so that we're aware of that. Supervisor Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to real quickly tell Bob I appreciate our conversation before the meeting started, answer my questions related to the contract and transition, and I don't want to extend the conversation any further than it needs to, but for those of us that were on the commission a few years ago when we had a couple rogue buses, and I know Madam Chair remembers those those challenges. I'm excited that this contract will offer advancements in technology to address emergencies like that. And Bob, if you want to comment further, you can, but I just appreciate the conversation that we had.
I'm okay.
Okay, and I skipped over Supervisor Bailey, so my apologies.
No problem, Madam Chair. Thank you. I just really quickly, I'm very encouraged to hear that we are really going to focus on giving the opportunity to the existing employees. I'd like to encourage you going forward to have incentive programs for them in terms of building morale. I think that would be a welcome change as well. And also just Bob and your just putting it out there and saying that we're going to look at the different routes and serving 234. And you mentioned Quantico as being critical. It is critical. And so I know those types of discussions have been held with Mr. Jongworth, and I'm really appreciative of that. But I think in terms of those incentive programs, that will have a very great impact on employees in terms of the productivity level and increasing the productivity level. So thank you and welcome aboard.
All right, any other questions, Prince William County? All right, Stafford County?
No questions.
Manassas City?
I want to, just echo what Supervisor Bailey and Madam Chair, what you said, that I'm looking forward to Keolis, and I'm hoping that they will look at the morale, look at the management, and as well to see if there is needs for some changes, because I do want to make sure that we are taking care of our employees, but I also want to make sure that we're looking for opportunities if there's a change that's needed. So I just wanted to echo those comments and thank you.
Okay. Manassas Park? Fredericksburg? Mr. Kelly, you're muted.
No, I just
Okay.
want to thank Bob for the presentation. Having been dealing with Keolis over the years from the VRE perspective to include the initial contract negotiations, I'm thankful that it's a lot smoother this time, and look forward to having a good relationship with Keolis that we have at VRE. Thank you.
All right, Spotsylvania.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's Gary. Yeah, as Matt has said, we've dealt now with Keolis on the VRE for many years, and they're the people that make VRE go. We have a great staff, but if it wasn't for a family type of conductors and stuff of that nature, we probably may have a harder time. But Keolis has done nothing but done what they promised to us when we first hired them, and I think we're very fortunate to be able to get VRE on board for us. So thank you for the last few years with the Keolis, and few, I mean probably 10. But anyway, I look forward to working with them on the bus side. Thank you.
All right, and then Stafford. Okay, with that, we will move into our action items. 11.1, this is to authorize executive for the executive director to execute a contract with Keolis Transit America to provide fixed route bus and paratransit operations and maintenance services. And so if I can please have a motion.
So move, Madam Chair. Andrea Bailey.
Second, Kenny Bodie, Madam Chair.
And is there discussion from DRPT?
No discussion. Thank you.
Members of the General Assembly? Prince William County?
No discussion.
Stafford County?
No discussion.
Manassas City?
No discussion.
Manassas Park? Fredericksburg?
Questions?
Mr. Kelly?
Nothing for me.
Oh, no questions. Okay,
No
understood.
questions.
Madam Chair, I
And
think
Spotsylvania.
Donald Shoemaker has a question for you.
Okay. Anybody from Spotsylvania?
No, no questions, thank you.
No questions.
Okay, and then Mr. Shoemaker?
Learned what things are in this contract that protect OmniRide, given the poor performance of VRE in the last, it's better now, but pre-COVID, it was quite bad. And the executive director of VRE left. Are there protections in this contract in terms of on-time performance that will make sure that our riders are well protected and that this organization is well protected in terms of the contractor's performance?
Yes. I'll make sure I'm not on mute. Okay. Yes, we have a provision for on-time performance recognition. What was distinct about VRE's performance on that was directly tied to the introduction of the positive train control. And I cannot speak to the technical aspects of PTC beyond attending the meetings. So this would be the comparable instance for us would be if we went out and purchased bad buses. I guess this would be the most one-for-one example. Then them trying to work with our poor decision-making would be a different thing. And then I would not be here, for example. This is an instance where their performance is tied to, are their drivers safe? Yes, we do thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, days, weeks, months, accident-free, outstanding performance, great on-time performance. Our number one issue is actually tied to the other vehicles in the road and accidents and traffic construction. So a big part of what we do is we plan our services, we map our services, and we don't have as many of the issues that VRE does with Amtrak and some of those delays, but we do have our own. So that's our biggest issue is traffic contingency related, not necessarily performance and fleet. Our fleet's well maintained. We have excellent vehicles, talented mechanics, talented operators.
Okay,
but we do have what are known as contract deductions or liquidated damages for not meeting vehicle inspections, for unclean vehicles, for missed trips, things of that nature. And those are automatically built into the contract. And we have a quality assurance department that does audits and inspections. And the one additional thing I'll mention is it's not part of this procurement, it's independent. We do a 3 times per year audit of the maintenance, a sample of maintenance vehicles that comes in and inspects the work and then issues recognition. So there's not just disincentives, it's not just the stick, there's also the carrot for good performance.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Christine, will you call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Benny Smith,
Okay, Mr. Smith, you're there you go. You're muted.
Aye.
Pamela Sabeski,
Aye.
Donald Shoemaker,
Aye.
Nisha Allen,
Aye.
Meg Bumke,
Aye.
Matthew Kelly,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Aye.
Lee Carter,
No.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Thank you. And we'll now move to 11.2 to authorize the executive director to commence public participation for the transit strategic plan and the transportation demand management plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I didn't hear who made the motion.
I think that was
Senator Barker.
Senator Barker with the motion, Supervisor Bailey with the second. Is there a discussion from DRPT?
No discussion.
Members of the General Assembly,
No discussion.
Prince William County,
No discussion?
Stafford County,
No discussion.
Manassas City,
No discussion.
Manassas Park,
No.
Fredericksburg,
Nothing for me.
and Spotsylvania.
Nothing for me.
Nothing.
Christine, will you call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Benny Smith,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Donald Shoemaker,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Meg Bumke,
Aye.
Matthew Kelly,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Aye.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
and George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, and then item 11.3, concurrence with the City of Fredericksburg's VRE Operations Board appointments, just to allow them to make their appointments. City of Fredericksburg appointments to the VRE Board will expire July 12th, and they would like to appoint Mr. Matt Kelly and Jason Graham to represent them on the VRE Board. Is there a motion?
No move.
Second.
Angry.
Seconded by Senator
Gary
Barker.
Skinner.
Oh, Mr. Skinner, my apologies. And then Ms. Pendak can answer questions if we have any. DRPT, any questions?
No questions.
Members of the General Assembly,
No questions.
Prince William County,
No questions?
Stafford County,
No questions.
Manassas City,
No questions.
Manassas Park,
Okay.
Fredericksburg,
No questions.
and Spotsylvania.
No questions.
No questions.
Christine, will you call the roll?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Andrea Bailey,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Benny Smith,
Aye.
Pam Sabeski,
Aye.
Donald Shoemaker,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Meg Bumke,
Aye.
Matt Kelly,
Aye.
Gary Skinner,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Todd Horsley.
Aye.
Lee Carter,
Aye.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that resolution is approved.
Okay, going into chair's time, I will make it very brief. Want to congratulate Keolis on the contract. I'm hoping that Keolis and OmniRide can work very closely together, not only on issues relating to changing the culture of our bus operation system, but really instating a sense of transparency in how we do our business. Safety obviously should be the number one concern, in making sure that our commuters are able to get back and forth to work, and that our riders are able to get back and forth across the county, whether it be to the grocery store or wherever they may go. So we are looking at this as a fresh start. We do have very high expectations. I know Mr. Schneider will make those expectations very clear. And so, we're looking forward to this partnership. I also want to thank Mr. Steyerwall for his service to OmniRide and all the work that he's put in, as well as the passion that he's put in to transportation. You can tell that it's something that he loves, and looking forward to seeing kind of the next phase of what you decide to do. And just know that you'll always have a home here at OmniRide. And lastly, I just want to thank all the commissioners and participants for your patience. I know some of these meetings are long, but these action items are very important to go over. So thank you for your patience. And with that, we'll move to item 13 to go over commissioners' time. And we'll do this. Christine will call the roll, and as she calls your name, you can either say something or you can say pass.
Right, we'll start with Victor Angry.
I'd just like to say congratulations, Chuck. All right, and thank you for everything you've done.
Andrea Bailey.
Welcome, Keolis, and congratulations, Chuck. Take care.
Kenny Bodie.
I'll just ditto what Supervisor Commissioner Bailey just said. Thank you.
Janine Lawson. Supervisor Lawson.
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I said pass.
Okay. Benny Smith.
Pass.
Pam Sebesky.
I just want to welcome aboard Keolis and really thank Chuck for all your service and how much I've enjoyed working with you. Thank you.
Ralph Smith.
Pass. Thank you.
Donald Shoemaker.
I just wanted to welcome aboard Keolis to the OmniRide family. I hope we get some great service for our bus riders. And bus is really important, especially for our seniors and also for people that are don't have access to vehicles or have intermittent access to cars. I also, and I apologize because I'm an alternate and I didn't know what the policy was. I actually had two suggestions on their typos in the contract that we just approved, 20-04. On page 14, it says contacting officers instead of contracting officer. I believe that's what it's supposed to be. And on page 16, there's a sentence under section 18, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in, it says, the contractor for use and performing services for OmniRide and shall save OmniRide harmless. And I think it should say it should hold OmniRide harmless. I don't think it changes the intent of the contract, but if I noticed those two Scribner's errors today while I was reading through, but I didn't get a chance to email you during office hours, so to speak. So I don't know what the procedure is for that, but they are basics, small usage errors if they could be updated, even though we've already approved the contract. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we'll take care of those.
Thank you.
Tanisha Allen.
Pass.
Meg Bumpke.
Congratulations, Chuck. You did a great job. I'll miss you at FAMPO. And welcome Keolis and look forward to the great things that they're going to do for PRTC.
Matt Kelly.
I want to go ahead and give my best to Chuck. No doubt we will continue to bump into each other in downtown Fredericksburg. Also want to welcome Keolis aboard and want to make one quick comment. When Keolis took over the train, VRE, they had some significant challenges to overcome at the time and did them with flying colors. And with regards to the question on delays, I came on board on VRE, a lot of those delays were self-inflicted at the time. But since then, the major cause of our delays has nothing to do with Keolis. It has to do with two train operations, CSX and Norfolk Southern, who own the tracks, heat restrictions, their regulations, congestions on the rail by CSX, the positive train control. And none of those were anything that really were. They have done a great job for VRE, and I know they'll continue to do a great job for us here with OmniRide. Thank you.
Gary Skinner.
Yes, I'd like to ditto what Matt just says. There's a lot of people that don't understand what causes delays out in the route. And it certainly wasn't Keolis because they put more than 100% every time they're working for us out there. And I knew the same thing for us on the bus lines. There are so many things that go on that stops trains that we have no control over whatsoever. And I will tell you, Keolis and us and VRE staff are trying to change that. And they've got a great working relationship with CXS. Okay, and so I don't think it was meant to be, but the remarks made about Keolis are not true. I would hope people would look into it before they ever make a comment like I heard tonight. Thank you. And good luck and welcome aboard Keolis again. Thank you.
Deborah Frazier,
Pass.
Todd Horsley,
No additional comments. Thank you.
Lee Carter,
No additional comments.
Elizabeth Guzman,
Just to say that this is my first formal meeting after being appointed with the speaker, by the speaker. So I look forward to working with everyone in the next coming years. Thank you.
and George Barker.
As a longtime health planner in Northern Virginia, Chuck, I want to thank you for all your work on the planning side and helping us come up with plans and move things forward, and all the best wishes to you.
Madam Chair, that's the end of commissioners' time.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move, Vic Angry.
Second.
Kenny Bodie.
All right. Thank you all and see you in September. Is that correct? September. Okay, we'll send out
That's
the meeting
correct.
notices.
And
Thank you all.
yes, most important, the meeting reminder not to be on the call September, whatever, or August, whatever. So see you in September.
We will be in person.
Yes,
All
hopefully.
right. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Stay safe.
Good night to you all.
Thank you.